everybody, Ellie here for WhoCulture once again. You saw me yesterday, I'm back today because we didn't just have one episode of The War Between the Land and the Sea this Sunday. Oh no, we had two in one drop. How exciting. So of course, that's what you're all here for, the ups and downs for episode 2. But before we continue, I want to tell you about an incredible offer that we have from our partners at Proton VPN. Picture the scene. A spin-off of an incredibly popular sci-fi franchise has just launched, but for some reason it's only available in the UK at first and not the rest of the world. So that totally made up scenario sounds pretty annoying for everyone not in the land of scones and Yorkshire puddings, right? But with a VPN like Proton, you can unlock your location exclusive content wherever you are in the world. So even if you're out of the UK, maybe on holiday, you can still access BBC iPlayer and all your other content and services as though you were still at home. Proton VPN also keeps you safe online by protecting you from cyber threats and malware, and it also comes with a built-in ad blocker that prevents advertisers from using your browsing history to gather your personal data. Click the link down below or scan the QR code to get up to 75% off Proton VPN and unlock Doctor Who from anywhere in the world. Thank you so much to Proton VPN for sponsoring this video, and now let's get into the ups and downs for episode 2 of The War Between the Land and the Sea, Plastic Apocalypse. Okay, let's start as we mean to go on, shall we? And come in with an up, which has to go to Kate Lethbridge-Stewart, just being a total badass. The first 10 minutes of this episode is basically Kate reminding everyone that she's in charge. I love the opening scene between her and Barkley. She's very serious, he's making jokes. Like I said in the previous video, I think that's part of his character, but she's very much like, this isn't a joke, this is serious. But the scene in particular that I really liked was the scene after this where you had Kate, the Prime Minister, and the original ambassador walking down the corridor, and her basically calling them out for making her pick up the pieces or take the blame if it falls through. And she calls them out on it. And this is the kind of scene that I've been hoping for and wanting to see in this more grounded show. Just important conversations, serious conversations happening in a simple location, just walking down a corridor. It's less about spectacle and more about character and consequence. And these are the sorts of scenes that really show that. We don't need to be anywhere elaborate. What's important is what's being said and what it means for the people involved in that scene. And this moment in particular was a really good example of that. Yes for that, yes for Kate, she is badass. We love her. Also, she gets to do some swearing in this episode, which again just shows that this is not Doctor Who. A bit like when Torchwood had that second episode that very much was like, this is not Doctor Who! This is more subtle, but still it was nice to get Kate to be able to, really let loose with her anger a little bit later and say what she actually wanted to say. And I guess on a similar note, we could jump into my next up for the episode because it also revolves around a character, Barkley. But not just Barkley as a character. I spoke a lot about Russell Tovey's performance in the previous ups and downs, and I don't want to just repeat myself there, although I do still think all those things in episode 2 as well. But more specifically, I really like that we see growth in Barkley's character throughout these 2 episodes. We see him go from the beginning of this episode and most of the first episode being very nervous, very anxious, and we slowly see him growing in confidence as he realizes that he actually can make a difference and does have a say. And I think a big reason why this is working so well and why we're connecting to the character is because we're seeing him in different circumstances. So we're seeing him in a room full of officials and politicians and important people, and he's the smallest person in the room. He's very closed off, he's very anxious, he's very nervous, he doesn't really know what he's doing, he's a fish out of water, if I'll use that joke again. I'll just keep using that joke. But then we also see him with his family. We see him with his ex-wife, we see him with his child, and he's a very different person when he's with them. As most of us are, you are very different when you're around people that you're comfortable with. And so we're seeing a confident version of him as well. And so it's nice to see that version of him slowly bleed into the anxious version to start building him to become more confident in those more high-stakes situations as well. And it's really great to see these moments with his family. This is what I feel has been lacking in the Whoniverse lately. I've commented on it loads when we covered the first 2 seasons of Doctor Who. Seeing characters with their family. That's how you build connections with them and get to know them on a deeper level and then feel connected to them as opposed to just seeing them there. There's no substance to a lot of characters, whereas I feel like with Barkley in particular, they're making an effort to really help us get to know this character and who he is, and showing us different sides to him depending on what circumstance he's in. And that's important, especially with this character, because he is our connection to the show. We are Barkley, you know, we are the everyday people who very rarely get a say in how the world works, and yet in this instance, he gets a say, he gets to have a voice, and so we're behind him because he represents us as a people. And what I really like about this episode, well, both episodes actually, I like how it's mirrored, that both episode 1 and 2 end with Barkley saying the same word, the same line, but in episode 1 it's said with so much anxiety and nerves attached to it and uncertainty, whereas in episode 2 it's said with much more confidence and conviction. And if you don't remember, he ends the first episode going, okay. And in the second episode, he goes, okay. You know, I'm just giving you a demonstration there, but you know, you're seeing the growth in his confidence, and I like that we're ending on the same word. Whether that's going to continue, I wouldn't be mad if it did. Might get a little bit cliche, but I liked that it ended on the same word, but showed the difference in confidence that Barkley has had and has built over the duration of this episode. I also think a big part of that is the confidence that Kate has kind of put in him. We had that great scene with the two of them in the back of the unit truck, and she didn't dismiss him, she didn't kill him. So that was a great scene for Kate and for Barkley to kind of give him that confidence he needs that he can do this. So I think that worked really, really well. And while we're on the topic of Kate, again, I think we should address the scene that has got a lot of people talking for a lot of different reasons. The Kate and Colonel Ibrahim scene. Now, as you guys know, we have a nickname for Colonel Ibrahim here, Colonel Sexy, and this scene absolutely put the sexy in Colonel Sexy. What the heck is going on here? Now here's the thing, I think I'm going to shock you all with my response to this scene. It gets neither an up or a down, because I didn't find it terrible, but I also didn't love it as much as I thought I was going to. I totally ship them together, and I think there is a great story to be told with these characters. However, this scene made me feel uncomfortable. And I was trying to figure out why it was, because unlike a lot of people don't want the two of them to be together. And I understand the reasoning behind that. I quite like them as a pairing, and I think, as I say, it could be very interesting. I think the reason this particular scene made me feel uncomfortable, there's a few reasons. A, we've never seen Kate in a sexualized way before. So it kind of feels like you're watching your teacher or something. Do you know what I mean? It just feels like, you know, that they do those things, but you don't want to think about it. And that's kind of how it felt watching Kate, because we've never seen Kate in that way before. She's never been flirty. It just felt uncomfortable because it felt like we shouldn't be watching this. That's reason one. B, she didn't really look like she was that into it, to be honest. He was getting into it, as I say, put in the sexy and Colonel Sexy, but she didn't really seem like she was that into it. So I don't know whether that was an acting choice or whether, I'm not really sure what was going on there, but because she seemed a little bit uncomfortable, it made me feel uncomfortable. And I don't think that was quite the intention. But the main reason why I think this scene didn't work for me is because, for me personally, I feel like the importance of the relationship between Kate and Colonel Ibrahim isn't about sex. It's about Kate having someone who completely understands everything that she is going through, because he works with her, he knows the secrets. You know, I think a lot of people who have a job like Kate's, who can't come home and unload all the things that have happened in their day because most of it's top secret. So he understands everything she's gone through, and it's someone who can support her, you know, take on some of her burden and comfort her. And I feel like the scenes that we'd had in Doctor Who, the more subtle moments, actually gave us more of that, because they were less about the physical, less about this is just a typical affair that's about lust, and were more about this is someone who is caring for Kate, who's making her a cup of tea, who's helping her up, who's holding her up. You know, it's not about the physical, it's about the emotional. And so I think the relationship is right, and there is something to it, but this scene in particular felt like it missed the mark for me, because it was more about This felt to me like that second episode of Torchwood, where it was like, hey, look, this is for adults, let's have some sex in there. And although it could have been far more graphic, it just didn't feel like the right tone for what I think this relationship is trying to represent. Honestly, if she'd been curled up on the sofa and he'd come and given her a cup of tea and then sat and given her a hug, I think that actually would have been a far better representation of him being someone that is there to help her and comfort her, as opposed to she's trying to have a serious conversation and you can't keep your hands off her. But as I say, I am not against the relationship, so I'm not going to down it because I see what they're doing with it, and I do think that it's going to be important at some point. They're clearly going somewhere with this, so I'm hoping there's going to be an interesting payoff at the end. But you all thought it was just going to get on up and I'd skip ahead, but no. There's more to this, right? I don't just ship it because they look good together. There's reasons for this, okay? And they haven't quite hit that yet, so I'm hoping we're going to get more of the comfort in the next 3 episodes. We'll see. So also, while Kate and Colonel Ibrahim are busy, we have this kind of subplot going on with corrupt politicians and businessmen and people in government. I don't have much to say about the scene at the moment. I'm intrigued to see where it's going to go. It's definitely going to come back to cause some mayhem further down the line. I may slightly comment on the really bad American accent in that scene, but we'll skip ahead. It's not worth a down or anything, but it was a little distracting, not going to lie. But yes, I like that we're getting somewhere with this kind of deeper kind of political drama going on here. These slime ball kind of characters who are just in it for themselves. And I will say as well, I love Patrick Baladi as an actor. He plays the slime ball businessman sort of character so well, and has done in many different projects. He's just a perfect casting for that sort of role. So when I did see that he was on the cast list, I was quite excited. And I actually forgot he was in it until he appeared in that car. And then I was like, oh yeah, I forgot he was in it. He's brilliant, so he's one to watch out for. He's one of those actors that pops up in so many things, and yet you probably don't know his name. You know, one of those, but he's so brilliant. Also, just as a side note, the thing that I remember him mostly from is Ruth Jones's comedy show, Stella, and he played a character called Michael Jackson, and so now I just keep calling him Michael Jackson. So if at some point I refer to that character as Michael Jackson, that's why. I haven't lost my marbles. Also, I don't actually know what his character's name is, so to me, he's Michael Jackson. But obviously these politicians do have a hidden agenda, and they do reveal the identity of Barkley to the public. And this sequence that follows where it's revealed on the news and Barkley walks out and there's all the reporters, I just have to give another up to Lorne Balfe for the music. Now I know I gave him an up in the last one, but we all know how I feel about the musical score in any project, but in particular when it comes to emotional moments. And the music in that moment with the string melody, it just elevated the scene. It really put the pressure on. Music can inform the story, and I think in this instance that really helped kind of push the story along. So yes, I know I gave him up already, but I don't care. These are my ups and downs and I can do what I want, okay? And Lorne Balfe deserves another up, okay? So then we come to the negotiation room again, and we have the scene where Salt asks for a glass of water, of river water. This is where I do unfortunately come to my first down. I'm finding at the moment that things are slightly predictable. As soon as she asked for a glass of water and said river water, I was very certain that she was going to ask him to drink the water. It just seemed really obvious that that was what was going to happen. And we did have a line from one of the unit team members saying, what, they drink river water? And it was kind of one of those moments where it was then supposed to be shocking that they were going to make him drink it, but it just made the unit guy seem a bit dumb because, well, yeah, of course they're going to make him drink it. If I can work that out and you work for unit and you were just developing some massive, like, translation device, you should probably have figured that out as well. So yeah, I do feel like that was slightly predictable, but I do think there's a reason for these first 2 episodes in particular feeling predictable, and that's because a lot of what we saw in the trailers is what we've seen in these first 2 episodes. For example, we knew going in that he was going to be chosen as the ambassador. We knew that there was going to be some sort of rubbish storm at some point because we'd seen it in the trailers. And so I think a little bit of the shock was taken away by the fact that we'd already seen that, and so it was predictable because we'd already been shown it. So hopefully moving forward now, a lot less of episode 3, 4 and 5 have been shown in the trailers, so hopefully things are going to be a bit more surprising now. You know, I want something to surprise me. I want something really unexpected to happen. But so far, I am fairly certain that that water tank is going to crack at some point and flood that room full of people. I also am fairly certain that Salt and Barkley are going to fall in love. That seems quite likely to happen. And something to do with Kate and Colonel Ibrahim's relationship is going to come forward and interfere or be relevant at some point in this story as well. Again, happy to eat my words if none of those things happen. And I would be really happy if none of those things happened, because it means that it wasn't predictable and they were just, you know, throwing out red herrings to throw me off. So we'll see where we go with that. But at the moment, it just felt like some of those things were a bit predictable. Having said that, we do then have a brilliant scene where we have the rubbish storm up for that scene. Even if it was predictable because we'd seen it in the trailers, it didn't make it any less amazing to watch. Visually, it was just so impressive. Just wow. All that rubbish falling from the sky. But also beyond that, it's such an important message. And I know there's been some criticism more recently of Doctor Who in particular being very in your face with its messaging. And sometimes I agree with that. With this one, I kind of didn't feel that as such. A, because it's so relevant to the story, it's not been shoehorned in. It's a fact that our oceans are full of plastic and we have poisoned the waters. We know that to be a fact. That's something that's spoken about so frequently, so that's not really a shock. And the number of people, when this episode aired on social media, who were basically saying, I mean, that just looks like my town centre. Obviously exaggerating, but it's proving the point that this is a very current, timely issue that we have got going on. Obviously, this is to the extreme. We don't have rubbish falling out of the sky in rainstorms, but we do have a problem with rubbish, and we don't really consider the oceans as a main priority when we do that. And now some people also thought that the Titanic gimmick was a little bit too far. Again, I actually didn't mind that. I quite liked that. I quite liked the humour in there that the Titanic had finally reached its destination. But it also, again, just shines a light on how much stuff is sitting at the bottom of the ocean that we just don't care about. We don't think about. You know, the Titanic obviously wasn't designed to end up at the bottom of the ocean, but the fact is it got to the bottom of the ocean. We tried to get it up. We gave up and left it there. Not really considering, obviously now jumping into the Whoniverse as opposed to the real world, but not really considering what damage that might be doing to the people who actually live down there. So yes, it might have been a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek joke, but I also think it was just still telling us, putting across a very important message. And also this scene was really tense. Obviously all the rubbish falling looked really cool, but while Kirby was trying to get into the building back to Barkley, I genuinely was concerned. Now, I was fairly certain that they weren't going to injure or kill off Kirby this early on. Also, it's unlikely, well, I don't know, if they're going to go Children of Earth route, then maybe they will kill a child, but I was quite certain that Kirby was going to be safe, but that didn't stop me from gasping when that tyre flew past them and when that anchor nearly squished them. And my heart was beating fast, my heart was racing, and this is what I was looking for. Tension, drama. Yes, finally! And the thing is, this scene was so good, I almost wish it came a little bit sooner. Which does again lead me to my other down for this episode. That good old word you all love me using, pacing. Now, for Doctor Who, the criticism we had was that things felt rushed. This is almost the opposite, where you've only got 5 episodes, and towards the middle of this one, I felt it was just getting a little bit slow and repetitive. The 2 scenes in the negotiation hall with the glass of water, and then the scene that then built into the rubbish storm, I do feel that they probably could have been combined into one scene, and we could have got to that storm a little bit sooner. Just because it did feel a bit repetitive that we had a scene where we all piled into the room, we had a conversation, we had a bit of a debate, we all came away from the room, had a few scenes that were important for character development and could have still happened, Then we went back into the room and we had another conversation, and it was pretty much the same conversation again. So I do feel that they could have been condensed into one, and we could have had those family moments at a different point in the episode. For a 5-episode series, I do feel that you need to kind of get to the point a little bit quicker. Overall, I'm really enjoying, but that I did start to feel, and again, as I said with episode 1, I watched it with my family who are more casual viewers, and they did say, getting a bit bored of this room now. So it just needed to just pick up the pace slightly and get to the action a little bit faster. And then of course we go back into the negotiation room at the end of the episode after the storm to try and get them to stop throwing all the rubbish everywhere. And we come to such a brilliant scene in this episode, which again, up. The moment that Salt starts making her demands, when we get to the demand about the airspace over the oceans and waterways, the tension that builds in that room, people shouting over each other, everyone arguing, politicians trying to get their points across, nobody listening to each other, Barkley trying to fix the situation and not knowing what's going on, and Salt trying to talk and nobody listening to her. This was such a great scene. Probably the best scene in the episode. I would say this is probably better than even the rubbish storm. This is what we've been looking for. This is just people in a room, essentially. But the tension and the drama in this scene, as it all builds up to boiling point, was just incredible. And again, I told you Patrick Baladi was going to bring some trouble, and, you know, he's kind of instigating that in this scene. They're all shouting. Beautiful scene, beautiful scene. And then, I said I wanted a shock, Salt turns into a man and booms into the room for everybody to listen. And then Barkley's response as well, really well handled, calming the room down. When people get scared, they act out. These people are scared. They don't know what's going on. Just done so well. And what I really like as well, and it's a really great kind of metaphor, is very symbolic, that Salt is not being listened to. She's being completely ignored in her female form when she's trying to get the attention of the people in the room. And it takes her transforming into a man or into a male form and using a booming male voice to actually get people to listen to her. Says a lot, just saying, but also didn't see that coming. That's the kind of shock I'm looking for. More of that, please. Less predictable, more of that, because that was really, really great. And obviously at the end of the episode, Salt asks Barkley to come under the sea with her for the next round of negotiations. And as I said earlier, his response is a much more confident, okay. I'm glad that we're now shifting the location. As I said, it was starting to get a little bit repetitive just being in that room. I love the set. I love how it looks with the giant tank and the dynamics of the characters. But obviously, we do need to move the story along, and there's only so many scenes in the same room of people talking to each other that we can have until we need to move things along. So I'm glad that we are seemingly moving somewhere else now. And I'm looking forward to seeing how they're going to achieve this and what it's going to look like. So far, it's been a lot of kind of physical standing sets. Is this where we're going to start to see more of the kind of special effects, CGI? I don't know. I'm intrigued to see where we're going to go now that we're shifting locations and what that's going to look like. If anybody watched the re-edited version of the Sea Devils, obviously they had their kind of underwater base. So I'm intrigued to see what this new version of that is going to look like, if that's where we're heading. So there's one more thing I just want to mention briefly, because I did say in the first video that I would touch on this again in the second one, which is the references to the Doctor. In episode 1, I didn't mind it. I thought it was fine. This is a spin-off of Doctor Who, whether the marketing addressed that or not. So it didn't seem out of place at all for the Doctor to be mentioned. In fact, it probably would be weird if he wasn't mentioned. By the time we get to the end of episode 2, we've had at least 3 mentions of the Doctor so far. And while I don't think we shouldn't mention the Doctor and we shouldn't ignore the fact this is a Doctor Who spin-off, it did feel a little bit more forced in this episode. Mostly because both of those lines came from Kate. And it did feel a little bit like at this point they're trying to remind everyone, this is a Doctor Who spin-off, remember? And Kate almost kind of bragging, like, even reminds me of the Doctor. So I don't know. It's not a down by any means. I just think be careful, because I think the reference in the episode 1 was great, but if we just keep doing it, it becomes overkill. So we shall see if we have any more. We probably will. But let's see where they come up, if they actually fit within the scene, or whether, again, it feels like they're just being forced into the script this time round. So let me know your thoughts on that. What do you think? This was a fantastic episode. Although there is one less up than in the previous video, that's more because I didn't want to just repeat all the ups from video 1. But that doesn't mean that all those things don't still stand. I still think that Gugu and Mbatha Raw is fantastic. I still think Russell Tovey is fantastic. I just didn't want to keep repeating ups. So don't let the fact that there's one less up in this video make you think that I enjoyed this episode less than episode 1, because I actually probably enjoyed episode 2 more than episode 1. But obviously I just don't want to keep repeating myself with ups and downs. But I think this is shaping up to be near enough what I was hoping it would be. The tension is rising, the stakes are rising. I'm really, really enjoying it. The only thing I would hope is that they even out the pacing in the last 3 episodes. And obviously we're moving past a lot of what we've seen in the trailers, so hopefully it'll be less predictable moving forwards. But this has honestly restored my faith in the Whoniverse as a whole after the mixed bag that we had with season 1 and 2 of Doctor Who. This is a breath of fresh air. I'm really enjoying it, and I'm pleasantly surprised by how much I'm enjoying it. So keep this up, please, and let's go out with a bang and have 3 more really, really brilliant episodes. Of course, we will be covering those episodes, but before we get to those episodes, we will also have a spoiler discussion video coming out probably tomorrow, but don't hold me to that. Let me know your thoughts on episode 2 in the comments down below. In the meantime, I've been Ellie for WhoCulture, and in the words of Riversong herself, goodbye, sweeties.